Oh, let me leave. Just kidding.
Good evening. My name is Ebony Love, and today is Sunday, October 30th, and I am in Jacksonville, Florida. I am joined by attorney Elliot Jackson, who is in Tampa, Florida, and we are recording via Zoom. And so I always like to start these recordings by asking something to kind of ground our conversations. And so, Elliot, can you tell me your earliest memory?
Yes. Give me a second. I believe my earliest memory that I have is when I don't remember the age. I don't remember my age, but I was pretty young. At this time, I remember I wanted to go outside to play, and this is when I was living in the projects in North Carolina, Charlotte to be exact. I was joined by my oldest brother, and he used to always tie my shoes for me, and then we could go outside. My brothers were all older than me. I was the youngest of four. So to go outside, tying your shoes was a prerequisite, right? So you wouldn't fall down, you wouldn't trip, you wouldn't stumble. And this time, I can't remember the age exactly. I couldn't be over 4. Couldn't have been over 4. But this time, my oldest brother said, "No, I'm not tying your shoes for you, Elliot. You got to learn. And if you want to go outside, you're going to have to tie those shoes." And so where we were in the unit, I was in the rear of the unit where he left me. And he normally would pick me up and put me on the bed or on a chair and then tie my shoes for me. But this time he left me in the back room, and it was kind of like it was kind of like a clock was going off, and every step he was taking, he was getting closer and closer to the door. And I knew once that door closed, I would have been left alone and everyone else was outside playing. So I, in that moment, had to make a decision. Learn how to tie these shoes or be stuck in the house. And by the time he turned that knob, here I was running down the hallway with my shoes tied, and I learned how to tie my shoes myself.
When is your birthday?
November 3rd of 1995.
So you said that you grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. How long did you live there? Did you live there your entire life, or did you move at some point? And I'm just talking about the city, not necessarily the projects.
Okay, city. Charlotte. I lived there up until I went to college. When I went to undergraduate, I went away to Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I was still in North Carolina, but I would occasionally do summers all over, either in the state of North Carolina or in Jacksonville, Florida, because my aunt lived down in Jacksonville.
And how was it growing up in North Carolina?
It was a little weird growing up in North Carolina. I'll say this because at that time I understood race. I understood race, but I understood it differently because for example, I'll give an example to give context to my statement. I went to 2 elementary schools. I went to Park Road Elementary, and that was for kindergarten. And then from there, I went to Collinswood Elementary. And Collinswood is an immersion school. So I went through school every day, learning half the day in English, half the day in Spanish. And so it wasn't until I got into middle school, really, that I understood that I was like, that I understood race played a part in a lot of things. And I started to understand the difference because I was learning it through the context of me being a Black boy growing up, but also a Black boy learning another language, which was Spanish at the time. And I'm learning it from professors with different dialects, right? Spanish comes in various different dialects. You have a dialect from Madrid. You have the dialect from Guatemala. You have the dialect from Paraguay. You have the dialect from all of these different places. And so learning those nuances and understanding race in that context as well, because Hispanic is not deemed a race, it's deemed an ethnicity. So even learning the contours of that and being the darkest one in the room in most cases really informed a lot of how I grew up. And so growing up in North Carolina, I started to notice that about middle school, that that things were not always the same for everyone.
I'm sorry to cut you off. So when you talk about being one of the few Black faces in the room in elementary, or actually through K through 12, were you part of a minority, or what was the racial makeup of your schools?
So for my schools, Collinswood, the racial makeup, I would have, I think I can count on two hands the number of Black students in my class, at least. I know I couldn't be more than 10. I couldn't be more than 10 in my class of Black. But we had various ethnicities, of course. But there were at most 10 Black presenting students.
Do you know
from K through 5. Then your question.
So do you know how you ended up at Collinswood?
Yes. My mom wanted, because I was the youngest, my mom had a stroke when I was 1 years old. So that she was 36 at the time. And when she had that stroke, it paralyzed her permanently on the left side of her body. So for her, she wanted to regain her strength and work and, get through what this new life would be for her, having these conditions. So in that time, when I was starting school, I was maybe about 5 years old, because I started late. My birthday's in November. So for Southern schools, you have to meet the September 1st deadline. And so I missed the cutoff and I had to start the following year. So because I had a late start, of course, my mom started me on learning, because at the same time she was strengthening her mental acuity and trying to regain her mental skills. So in this sense, we're both learning at the same time. She was like, I want him to do what was considered the lottery, right? And we learned, since Brown versus Board and the decrees, there were certain things to integrate students into certain schools. And so my mom submitted me for the lottery program. And when I got in the lottery, I landed at Collinswood. And that's how I ended up there.
Did Collinswood feed into the middle school that you ended up going to?
Collinswood did feed. By the time I got to 5th grade, they expanded to 6th. I didn't want to stay there and then transfer. I just went on to our feeder middle school, which was called Smith Language Academy. Smith Language Academy is now, it turned into Waddell Language Academy, and then now it's language. I think now it's something else, but it was a feeder school, but yes.
And so did you take Spanish starting from elementary school all the way through high school, or how did it work?
Correct. I took it all the way to high school, and the last Spanish I had in high school was AP Spanish 5.
So,
and I took that in 9th grade.
Okay. How was your high school career? I know we just kind of skipped over middle school, but tell me about high school.
So high school, I told my mom, I said, Mom, I've gone to the language academies, kindergarten through middle. And again, I was one of the few Black faces in the room. So I said, Mom, I'd like to go to a high school that looks more like us, looks more like me. And my mom said, okay, you can. And so at that time, the lottery was still going on, and I entered high school in 2010. So at that time, I said, I want to go to a school that looks more like me. So I chose um, Philip O'Berry Language Academy. And my mom was like, hey, that's a new school. It's in a good area. You can go there. That's one that's acceptable. But I couldn't go to the neighborhood high school or anything like that because she wanted me to at least be able to preserve my language, studies, and then do something that I was remotely interested in as well.
Okay. I'm going to pause the recording real quick because I just realized that your girl doesn't have her charger in. So hold on one second. Okay. I'll be right back. Okay. So now you're in high school and you're at, can you say the name of the school again?
Philip O'Berry. And if it makes it simple, you can just say POB. That's what we call it. Or Berry, or you can say Berry, either one.
Okay. POB. So at POB, were there any classes that stood out to you, or did you have a favorite teacher?
Absolutely. So I had two. I have to give you. I have to give you a couple. I'm sorry. I can't do Philip O'Berry any justice without highlighting a few. So the class in particular were my forensic science courses. At Philip O'Berry, when I entered, we had a medical track, a technological track, and we had an engineering track. The engineering track soon became defunct, and so you only had medical or IT. I was in the medical side, and in the medical side, I focused on forensic science because we had a star professor by the name of Tamika Stubbs, and I adored her. And that's where I learned a lot about forensic science, the gastrointestinal tract, and the anatomy of the body, the anatomy of the body systems. And each class was set up like a crime scene. Like our first class for a subject, we would come in and we're like, oh my God, why is there a cadaver, not a cadaver, but like, why is there a little, what is it? A doll in the floor with blood around it. Oh my God. Of course we can't go over and touch it right now because the instructions will soon come. However, we were like, oh my God, why is that happening? And then we started with watching either a CSI, a Criminal Minds, or a docu-series of a real serial killer or someone who engaged in some nefarious criminal behavior. And we would examine, like we would do a test associated with that. For example, for Ted Bundy, we watched a video on Ted Bundy, and then after that, we did a test associated with it. The same thing with the Zodiac Killer. We did something with that, and I believe it. And this is, I guess, this statement will be timely, but we also watched a piece on Jeffrey Dahmer and him eating his victims, and so the part of him eating the victims, though, is where we went in and we actually did some tests to determine how we would find out if a bodily fluid was from the stomach or not, or how long something has been in the stomach from decomposure and stuff like that. So everything was just put together and connected really well. So I fell in love with forensic science, and that's from Miss Stubbs. It wouldn't be fair. Okay.
How do you spell Tamika's first name?
Tamica.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, and so I wouldn't do any justice without naming three other teachers that just were phenomenal.
So you just finished with Tamika Stubbs, and you said that you were going to identify three more.
And these will be quicker. No, three more teachers. Forensic science is the only class that I fell in love with there. sorry, I'm going to name four. I apologize. So the first one I have to name is Major Roland Beasley. He was the senior Army instructor for JROTC when I was in high school, up until my last year when he departed. But he was a strong leader. He was a thoughtful leader. He was an intentional leader of our unit, and he saw a person for who they were. Right, he saw you at your core, not at what you present or what you'd like to do. You know, he saw you for who you were, and so he was really instrumental in just nurturing me and becoming as disciplined as I am now, and ensuring that, you know, sometimes you don't have to always show how you feel, right? And it sometimes it's hard, but you don't always have to show it. And and it's funny, he knew, like, if someone said something I didn't like, oh, he knew it. And he called me on it once, and he was like, "Jackson, I know you didn't like what he just said, but you're not going to show it." And anytime that happened, I used to always think about that in my head, like, oh my God, I can't show it. I can't show it. I got to have a poker face. So that was my intro to the poker face. And I always appreciated him for that, because he allowed me to come in and really learn a lot, do a lot, and really gain this discipline and organization that has been instrumental from my time forward. Really quickly, another instructor, well, professor teacher I had was Miss Baker. Miss Baker was also another teacher that did a lot of the medical classes that I had. She was just the sweetest person in the world. And that she just gave a sense of care that was unmatched. So I could be remiss if I couldn't call her a favorite. I also have Miss Sharita Bell. Miss Bell, I literally, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. My first intro to the fraternity was in her class because she went, I believe she went to Winston-Salem State University, which is a HBCU. And so I think she did a presentation where she talked about her experience, and we learned that she was that she was a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And so I didn't know anything about any of that. You know, you said those words to me when I was in high school. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I remember going on the website of all of like the different fraternities, and I saw Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and I said, what is a pole march? And right then, Miss Bell was like, Elliot, get off that website. You're not supposed to be on there, and you're not even saying it right. And so, it went out of my head. I never thought about it again until I got to college. But it's those little moments there that I underestimated. But she was just a phenomenal teacher. She really gave me an intro into what it is like to go to an HBCU based on her teaching style. Right? She's a type of teacher that it will be tough on you, but in being tough on you, she's holding you accountable and going to teach you along the way. So I thoroughly adored her. And then the last professor is Miss BP. Miss BP, she was a super teacher. She did everything, right? And she broke down English for me, right? Broke down dissecting large pieces, critical thinking, critical analysis. And she did it through short poems. Every week we would have a poem or a short piece of literature to read, and we would analyze it critically. We'd be in small groups and we'd discuss it and think about those different pieces. And it was just thought provoking. And what I'll say to that effect is She was more than a teacher, because when I learned that my aunt passed away, I was in class, and I literally had to leave class. I was headed towards the office, and I nearly collapsed in the middle of the hallway. But Miss BP came, and she was like, "Do you need me to go with you? Do you need me to take you to the hospital? She has class going on right now." I'm like, "You can't abandon your class." But how she ran her classroom, she was there when she wasn't. So if she had to take me to the hospital, she could have done that. She would have done that, right? And so for me, that's why she is in the favorites, because not every high schooler has a teacher like that, right? And so those are my favorites. Sorry, it can be long drawn out, but I had to do it justice.
Don't apologize for the length of your answers, because this is your story and we want to know how you became the person that you are today. And so one of the things you talked about when you were talking about Miss Sharita Bell was that she kind of introduced you to the HBCU lifestyle, which is a really good way for me to segue into. I know that you went to Fayetteville State University, which is an HBCU in Fayetteville, North Carolina. How did you know that you wanted to go to an HBCU, and how did you choose Fayetteville?
Okay, awesome. So for me, I didn't know I wanted to go to an HBCU. I didn't know much about it. I didn't grow up. My mom has an associate's degree from LaGuardia Community College, but I didn't know. I didn't know about HBCUs. I didn't know about college. I had no guide. I had no rubric. I had no blueprint to follow. And so when all of my school moms, right, my favorites, had the opportunity to tell us about colleges and tell us about different things. Of course, they were talking about HBCU, but that's going in one ear and out the other to someone who doesn't know anything about it. So for me, I was looking at, what do I love doing? And I love forensic science. I love Criminal Minds, the TV show. I love CSI New York. I love those things. So being intentional about that, I wanted to go to a college that would give me a degree in something that I loved, so that I wouldn't be working. I wouldn't just be going to school for no reason. I'm doing what I love, and I'm having fun at the same time. So I went on the website, and this was in 2013, 2014. I'm looking up on the website, and I'm Googling colleges in North Carolina with forensic science program, because I wasn't prepared to go out of state. I mean, I didn't have much money. I didn't come from money. So I'm like, can't go out of state. I don't know how I'm gonna get there. I had my little car, but I bought my first car was a 1995 Ford Taurus. So when I bought that with my own money saved up, I could put it on the road, but I wasn't, I'm not going to put it on the highway. I'm going to put it on the back roads, and I'm going to get where I have to go. And that was Old Faithful for the longest. So I looked up those schools in North Carolina. And when I looked those schools up in North Carolina, I found out that there were only two that offered forensic science degrees: Guilford College and Fayetteville State University. I looked at Guilford's population and just kind of its website, and really off of the website alone, I was not interested in going there, because the website didn't look fun. It didn't look like there was anything going on. And it was in Greensboro, which was arguably closer than Fayetteville. But I chose Fayetteville State because when I went to tour Fayetteville State, my life changed. I toured Fayetteville State. Me and my mom went for their open house. And when we went to the open house, I was admitted on the spot. I gave my materials, my GPA, my documents. They admitted me right then and there. And then when I was talking with them, and I was talking with the admission counselors and the different people, they said, and the counselor said to me, "Oh, you should be a global scholar. Your credentials are global scholar credentials. I said, huh? I don't know anything about that. So later that day at the assembly that we had, the chancellor at the time recognized all global scholars, and among those named, I was among those named. I was among one of those people named to be a global scholar. So I was basically going to be going to going on a full ride almost to Fayetteville State University. And I said, full ride? Guilford College isn't offering a full ride. They're not offering, so far what I've seen is to be a home away from home. So let me get into the details though of what else I saw. After this open house, I came back for like registration of classes, which is I don't know what it's called now, but we have a special name for it. And I know Fayetteville State will kill me for not knowing, because I am its chief supporter. So, but I know the open house was called Fall Preview, and it's a registration day. We'll just call it registration day, not to over complicate things. But when I came back for registration, when I got there, I was greeted. Students with blue shirts on, blue and white, good old blue and white, blue shirts. Hey, you're here for registration? We have breakfast in this. And I'm like, wow, what in the world? Why do these people have so much energy this morning? Greeting me, taking me from one location to the next, treating me like gold, giving me muffins and the big muffins, the Otis Spunkenmeyer muffins, blueberry. That's my favorite. They gave me that. I was like, what? You giving me my favorite breakfast snack? You're taking me place to place? And I just fell in love with the energy that I saw. It was electric, took over my whole body. So then finally, after lunch, I registered for classes. After I registered for classes, I was told about a cheer program, which was creating higher expectations for, I can't remember the rest, but it's this program, a summer bridge that brings students to take two extra classes over the summer. It paid, and you get $1,000 worth towards your tuition if you complete the program. So I was told about that at registration. They didn't hide the ball from me. They offered me that, and I took it. So I was able to do that. But what was also electrifying, there were two Bronco ambassadors, and that's what we call them. There were two Bronco ambassadors who were like my big sisters, and they were literally taking me everywhere, making sure I had whatever I needed. And I don't have any sisters. I'm the youngest of the four boys. So I didn't have a sister. These two were like my big sisters, like, oh yeah, we got you. Come on, come this way. You got to go here. So when I left from the registration, they said, now we're going to go eat in the cafeteria. We're walking from one end of campus to the other end of campus. And when we're leaving out of the building, it's called the Helen T. Chick building. When we're leaving out of the Helen T. Chick, I'm walking towards our Greek plaza, which is our Greek plots, where the sidewalks are painted for each fraternity and sorority. Again, at this time, I don't know anything about it. I'm just seeing all these colors. All the fraternities are out. They got a smoker out, smoking food. They're out dancing. I'm like, what is in the world? And me, I'm inherently skeptical and nervous of people when I see large crowds, because, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to seeing that many people of color in one place based on my upbringings. But when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, do I need to go the other way? And my big sister was like, no, we're going to walk through. We walked through. They're offering me food. They're saying, hey, the energy is electric. Everybody knows everybody. And I'm like, wow. By the time I drove home that night and the night of Fall Preview, I knew Fayetteville State is where I had to go, because of the familial environment that they offered me, them being the only school that HBCU that offered forensic science as a degree. I was like, wow, I get everything that I want in this one institution. So it was a no-brainer for me.
Okay. And I have one thing to clarify really quickly. You said Bronco, and so Bronco is the mascot for Fayetteville State University.
Correct, the Bronco. Mm-hmm.
So you're now in undergraduate, and you came from PBO,
POB.
POB to undergrad. What was that transition like? Was it easy to transition into Fayetteville State, or like, did you have difficulties? What was the transition?
So what I'll say is this. It was a little difficult because even transitioning to POB was difficult because I never went to a majority minority school prior to high school. And so the transition was a little difficult. But in addition to that, transitioning then from POB to Fayetteville State, I was a little more jaded, if you would, in like kind of culture and things like that. So I knew things, and I knew how to, I knew about being Black. So I was okay in the transition for culture, but overall the transition was difficult in that I had some familial things going on and some other personal problems in my life, that ultimately when I transitioned to college, I wasn't transitioning to college with, with everything beautiful, dandelions and pumpernickel pies to accompany me to college. I literally went to college with I went to college with my things in boxes. I didn't come with my things in bins and crates. Oh yes, we have this package. We have I came with my things in boxes, cardboard boxes, because when I left Charlotte, North Carolina, I had no other destination but success. And so there was no option for me to go back home, or this didn't work out. This didn't work out was not a phrase that was even acceptable in my life, in my family, in anything, in my condition, right? So the transition was difficult, and the only person to help me when I first moved in was my big brother. And when I say big brother, I was I was a part of the Big Brother Big Sister program of Charlotte, North Carolina. So I had a big brother who was his name Michael Gross, Grosz, and he's a phenomenal man. I owe the world to him, because he's taught me so much. And so he helped me transition with my things. But even then, those personal concerns and personal problems and issues I was facing, like, really prevented me from doing well during the summer bridge program. And so I passed the summer bridge program and I did well. I still got credit and all those things, but there was a piece of me that was unavailable. And it wasn't until I was able to overcome those personal things that fall semester, I became available. And that's when the HBCU, I really got I got that fresh breath of HBCU again, because I personally wasn't available to the institution. And it wasn't until I made myself available that I the transition became seamless.
Do you think that if you would have went to a predominantly white institution at PWI, that you would have been able to make that transition from unavailable into available?
Probably not. I won't say that I won't say that it would have been impossible. I don't think that I would have, because in that summer bridge program, I had other students who were just like me in that summer bridge, who had experienced similar traumas, experienced similar things that I had. We all had, let's say, just for the purposes of this conversation, we all had Uncle Sean, right? We all had a Auntie Nini, right? We had similar family makeups. Like we had a person who acted the same way in all our different families. So if we had ever had an issue, we had different ways of handling it or getting through it, overcoming it. So that was what my experience was like. So when I wasn't available, right, I became available through all of the group and the people that were around. And in particular, there were two people that, aside from my group members and my friends, there were two people who that were really instrumental. One, his name was Tyson. Tyson was that's one person. The other person is Daquan Baldwin. Daquan Baldwin is a prophet in his religion. And Tyson is a pastor. Well, he not ordained, but he provides sermons. So we had a Bible study one night. And in that Bible study, I'm sitting in the conference room of our nicest residence hall on campus. I'm sitting in the conference room and he's talking and I'm unavailable. I'm sitting there unavailable. And then immediately he says something and it's like a fire runs through my body. And I immediately start crying. I don't know if to put it in context as well, I was sitting in that conference room and it's like, have you ever felt like a spotlight was just on you or that a speaker keeps making eye contact with you? Tyson continued to do that to me, continued to make eye contact, continued to have this spotlight on me. And so that's why that electric feeling came through my body and I started to cry. And it was because that was my release, right? And at that moment, he pulled me to the side afterwards and spoke with me. The same thing with Daquan Baldwin. Both of them were there. And Daquan Baldwin, being a prophet, was like, okay, well, tell me about what's going on because I feel it, right? I know what's going on, right? And so these people help channel and doing all these different things. And then I'm being supported by my group. I'm being supported by friends and colleagues, classmates. I don't think that Guilford College would have been able to provide me that. I strongly don't believe so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to switch gears just a tiny bit, but I'm going to go back to something that you talked about earlier. Earlier, you talked about POB and how it had 3, but really 2 like tracks at the school, and one of them was the medical track. And so when you came to undergrad, my understanding is that you wanted to be a doctor. Is that true?
Correct. I wanted to be an anesthesiologist, a forensic anesthesiologist at that.
Okay. And did you graduate with a degree that would allow you to pursue that career path?
Absolutely. So I have a bachelor's in forensic science. That's the formal name of it. However, we consider it a Bachelor of Science in Forensic Biology. So I'm pre-med eligible. I meet all of the qualifications to go to medical school. I meet all of the eligibility to be to take the patent bar. I meet all of those, but the forensic science degree is just a newer term that the patent bar has not caught up to. So I wouldn't just by virtue of like signing my name on the information, I wouldn't be available to take the patent bar. That way I'd have to give them the course layouts for my courses to show them that I'm patent bar eligible, but I am.
Okay. And so how did we go from POB medical, your favorite class is forensic science with Tamika Stubbs, Miss Stubbs, and you have a degree, a Bachelor of Science in forensic biology. How do we go from all of that science background to law school?
Okay. And so I think all of my experiences in college really led up to that, but I'll give you the most integral for me. And the most integral was to graduate in essence, because you wouldn't pass the class if you don't do well in it, we have a capstone for our degree, and basically what happens is the students are paired in the forensic science program. Your I guess juniors are paired with a senior, or juniors are paired with a senior, and each person you're basically like your own forensic science team. And on a particular day in the spring semester, all of you go as your team and you're going to your crime scene. You walk into your crime scene and you begin working immediately, collecting your evidence. And when I mean by collecting, you're taking pictures, you're doing your forensic photography to capture the scene as it appears right there. You're doing, because we have classes in forensic photography, you're doing the photographs, you're doing the dimensions, doing your calculations, your drawing, because we also do sketching as well. So you're drawing the scene. You are taking your measurements of everything. You're also collecting your physical samples of things that you may need if you have physical evidence. For example, if for mine, we had a broken picture frame, glass fragments. We also had blood. I had a fingerprint, and I had hair and soil. And so with all of those different things, we have to use our training for our sophomore and junior year. You're working with the younger students to say, okay, you remember this from class. Okay, so I'm making sure they remember it. And it's like, hey, we got to collect the soil. So collect the soil. And what you want to do is collect soil sample, collect as much of the soil as possible. Or if there's nearby soil, also collecting soil from the different areas so that you have a reference to refer back to. And then you'll use the Munsell chart and a few other things to make your analysis of it later on. But collecting all of that. So we had to collect all of those different pieces of evidence. Didn't get to analyze anything, but you have to take it, do your measurements, do all of that. And then it's stored. And I'd like to make a correction. It's in the fall semester that we collect the evidence, because we have to analyze it as well. I forgot about that. We analyze it. So we collect in the fall, analyze in fall, and then we report in the spring. So after collection, then in your upper level forensic science classes, the seniors will then take those evidence, and you're going to follow chain of custody. And you follow the chain of custody, sign it out. And as you sign it out each day of class, you sign out your evidence. You would analyze it as you need. And so I had to analyze the glass under a microscope using the different oils, so I could determine whether the glass fragments are all from that same picture frame or whether there was other glass from another source. What was the refractory index? All of that. Also, the picture frame was broken, so I had to do physical match comparisons, and how to do that ethically and under the forensic science standards. Then also analyzing the bigger pieces of glass, because there was a fingerprint on the glass. And so the fingerprint, to illuminate it, I had to use the particular fingerprinting dust. And I actually got tagged in my capstone for it, because I used the black dust when I should have used silver or gold to illuminate it on glass. But I never took the fingerprinting course because it came after I was already a senior. So the fingerprinting course already came. And so I didn't have that knowledge at the time being, but all of that together. So this experience of collecting, analyzing the evidence, I had to prepare a presentation of the evidence that I had and come up with a solution. Because when I analyzed the blood sample, I had to analyze the blood sample against a potential suspect. And I had to come to a conclusion whether that blood matched the suspect, and using other things as well to match it. And mine did not match. And so I had to defend my results before a panel of other experts within the field. Many were alumni or practicing professionals. And so when I went to do my presentation, that's when I realized in that moment that I wanted to be a lawyer. And it was because when I stood at that podium with my presentation up there cued and the slides and everything, I'm being grilled back. Well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Isn't it industry standard that you do this? And I realized, wow, I'm not in love with the lab. I have too much personality for the lab. What I am in love with is defending my results, defending my finding. I stand on why I use that black dust, because out of my training and the knowledge that I had at the time being, I did the best that I could to illuminate that fingerprint. I collected that fingerprint and I examined it against that suspect, and that is not his fingerprint, using the 5-match coded system for CODIS and all of those different things. I I stood on what I did, and that's what let me know, like, that's the side that I want to be on. I want to be defending my result. Or I'd like to give the questions, because I know the steps, right? I know the steps that I had to take, right? And if I see someone else skip a step, was not thorough in a step, right? You need to question someone on that, because in all, people's lives are on the line when it comes to a forensic analyst analyzing evidence in the criminal context. So in that moment, I realized I have to be a lawyer, though the thought of still going back to medical school still lingers in my head sometimes.
Got you. And so when you did the panel of experts, was that in your spring or in your fall semester?
That was in the spring semester, because I had to analyze all of the evidence. After collecting it in the fall and analyzing some of it in the fall, we did some further analysis in the spring, and then the presentation was like the capstone at the end.
Okay. So when you go to law school, you have to take a thing called I don't even know what it stands for, so let me not even kid, the LSAT. It stands for something, I don't know what it is. Law school
admission test?
Law school admissions test, maybe I don't know.
I think so. I think that might be it.
So when did you take that?
So I took that in November of 2017. I got all the books that I needed, but I didn't really get to study that long for it, because LSAC tried to debate my financial situation. They wanted to know, like, oh, how much money do you make? I didn't work through college. I was on a full ride scholarship. Again, my mom didn't make any money because my mom is permanently disabled. So she hasn't filed taxes since 96. So when the LSAC asked me for my financial affidavits to prove, I said, I'm telling you all, I don't have any affidavits for my mom because my mom does not file taxes. I gave them a letter to show that she's permanently disabled, and they're like, oh, well, that's not enough. That I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I have contacted the IRS. So the stress of that. Also, I served as Student Government Association president. This was my second term in office. I was elected twice over contest. So all of that together prevented me from being able to set the time aside to really, really, really study. So I had to do a kind of ballpark, go through these books, run through for a weekend, really a day, going through this book and pulling out whatever tests I can and skills I can learn really quick, and go in and take that exam. And I scored right at the 50th percentile based on the 2018 study. There was a 2018 study that said that most African Americans will score at or below a 142. And so I scored at that range. So.
Okay. And so you have your LSAT score, LSAT scores release really unpredictably. So I'm assuming that you got it between December and December 2017, January of 2018. And then you do your senior capstone presentation. How did you go about figuring out what law schools you wanted to apply to, and then ultimately choosing law school?
So at that time, I wasn't pre-law, but because I was SGA president and I was a member of the board of trustees, I was an ex officio member of the board of trustees for Fayetteville State. I was always around university council. I was always around the legal affairs office. I was always there. And then, of course, I was a very strong leader. I was a involved leader. So I was always over there. So when I wasn't pre-law though. So when they learned that I was going to law school, they were so excited for me. And so Attorney Powell was our pre-law coordinator at the time, and she's assistant university counsel. So she assistant or associate. I don't want to get her title wrong, but she's second in command in legal. So she found out about it. She was just so excited. She was like, "Elliot, come see me. We gotta get your personal statement ready. We have to get this ready. We have to get this ready." And I'm like, "Well, hold on, slow your horses now. I don't know if I'm quite there yet." I didn't make the decision until after the presentation. So, but before then, she was like, "Get your stuff together, get everything together, get everything together." And so, as I was working on those things with her, I looked on the calculator, and it said with my 142 GPA was a 3.47, I believe, at the time. Those two things alone, so that I had maybe a 50% chance at FAMU. I had a 50% chance at North Carolina Central. I had, I think, an 80% chance somewhere else and a couple other places. I wasted my free applications that I got. I wasted those because I ended up going for like Cornell and some of the big schools, because I was like, let's just try it, let's try it. What summarily denied. But ultimately I ended up going with FAMU because I still had a chance, but Attorney Powell really gave me guidance and support, because she was like, I thought I wasn't going to law school. Once I made my decision, and then I looked at the score in that calculator, I was like, oh, I'm not going to law school. That's not in the cards for me, because my score wasn't high enough. But ultimately, Florida A&M accepted me, and I applied by the priority deadline, not by the priority deadline, the general deadline. So that was already late. So I applied on the last day of their opening, their window.
Okay, so FAMU stands for Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. Their law school is in Orlando, whereas their main campus is in Tallahassee. But we'll get into that later. But how is FAMU different or similar to FSU?
What regard? The law schools?
So, like, were your studies, were the environment the same when you were at FAMU Law? Or, like, did you have different experiences in the classroom or in, like, general social circles? Were the experiences the same or different?
Absolutely. So, FAMU's law school being a professional school, I will say it was different. It's not a main campus HBCU vibe, energy, anything. Really, that's not the climate that's there. In general sense, because it's a professional school, and you have to be at a professional level. But my experience, I believe, was divinely ordained and divinely written, because the circles I connected in and the circles that I worked in and moved at FAMU Law positioned me to have the same experience that I had at Fayetteville State. Because immediately when I was in law school, my first year, my experience was like How to Get Away with Murder, minus the sex, drugs, lies, and killing, right? But if you look at How to Get Away with Murder at its foundation and its core, the Keating Five, she took the top 5 students of her class and brought them into a clinic to help them get real world practical experience, to prepare them to be lawyers, so that by the time they went out to do jobs or do whatever they wanted, they've already argued a case, they've written a motion, they've checked these boxes, so that their transition to practice will be seamless, right? At its core, that's what How to Get Away with Murder stands for. And at its core, I had similar experiences, because in my civil procedure class, my professor, phenomenal professor, she at the time was in litigation with the university, and she would comment on the case and say, oh, like, hey, I don't know how this would go, but at this stage, the summary judgment stage, these are things that the courts typically look for, right? And this is real world. Now let's get back to the academic, right? So you're getting a view of both. But One day she said, I don't know how that would go, right? And you don't think that a professor would tell you that. You would think a professor is going to say, Black letter rule of law. This is what it stands for. No, that's what you would think. And that's what I think a lot of people think when they think of law school. Like, it's hard and fast, got to be the black letter law. It's right or wrong, yes or no. But the truthful answer that most lawyers will give you is it depends, right? It always depends. So for her, she said, I don't know. And for me, I didn't want to take that for an answer. So I literally went home. I went, after I left from school that day, the law school downtown, I literally went to Agave Azul, which was one of my favorite places to go. I went to Agave Azul, got me something to eat with a classmate. Then I went home. I went and stopped at my computer room, and I got on the computer and I started researching. I said, there's got to be an answer to this question. I wrote my professor a memo on the issue with the limited facts that she presented, which was like maybe a sentence. I wrote a whole memo on it, and I emailed her at 2:00 in the morning, that memo. From that point forward, we were joined at the hip, me and that professor, because I added value to her life and to her situation, because it was just like, oh, she had read some of the cases, but the level of analysis that I had performed on those cases allowed her to see something differently. And so she ultimately withstood summary judgment and or a motion to dismiss. I can't remember which one it was at the time right now, but whatever it was, she withstood it. And I mean, at that point we were joined at the hip, and it was kind of like I was always, doing things outside of school, but not so much for her case, but for other things. She's just exposing me to real life practice outside of that opportunity. And so for me, it was big, because it was like, wow, I'm watching How to Get Away with Murder on Thursday nights. Annalise is on there, but this is my real Annalise. Like, this is the real Annalise right here, because she's working and doing her thing while also teaching me how to do the thing that I want to do. Right. And so ultimately I found that at FAMU Law. But I think sometimes that is not always preserved at our professional schools, because sometimes at professional schools that are housed at HBCUs or HBCUs professional schools, sometimes we think, oh, well, that's for the undergrad. But no, the teaching teaching period at an HBCU is teaching with excellence, with caring, and meeting students where they are, because I truly believe HBCUs exist to provide a education to anyone who's willing to accept it, who's willing to take it, right? If you want an education, you're serious about it, go to an HBCU, you'll get it, right? You'll get an education, and a world-class education at that. And so I think sometimes they lose sight that you can still be an HBCU by providing that excellence and providing that extra care and civility, because that goes the furthest, right? HBCUs qualify the unqualified in most cases. And
I'm going to take a really quick segue. We've been talking a lot about HBCUs, and in case it's not obvious by this conversation, I identify as Black. Do you identify as Black?
I do.
Okay. And so what does HBCU stand for?
Historically Black College and University.
Okay. Just had to get that definition out there just in case. And then another, just for clarification, you've been talking about How to Get Away with Murder. That is not like, for those who don't know, How to Get Away with Murder is a television show written and created by Shonda Rhimes.
Correct.
Yeah. And so is it still running, or have they finished the series?
They finished the series at season 5. Broke my heart. I could have, if I was a writer on it, I could have kept it going for just as long as Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. So Grey's Anatomy, also written by Shonda Rhimes. I don't even know what season they're on, but Lord, they're still going.
16, and I'm still following. I'm still following along.
I'm not. But thank you for taking the break with me to get those definitions out. we are going to transition just a little bit. So you're at FAMU, you get through your first year. One thing as when you're in law school, you kind of don't know what you're doing during your first year. That's just with everyone. Nobody knows what they're doing. And so, how did you try to figure out what you wanted to do with your law degree?
So I figured it out really. So after my first year, so because I had a low incoming credentials, FAMU didn't give up on me. They gave me a shot. And so when they gave me that shot, I was on academic probation immediately. But it was because they were like, we want you to have these additional resources at your disposal to make sure that you do well here. Because statistics have given up on you. We haven't. Here are some additional resources to help you. And I didn't look at it that way because I was mad. I literally was mad. I was like, how y'all accept me and you put me on probation, you punish me? And it was our then associate dean, Alicia Jackson, who we have the same last name. We're not related, but she took me and was like, not at all. You're like my nephew. No, we didn't admit you just to punish you. We admitted you to give you a chance, to give you additional resources. So sometimes you have to change your frame of viewing things to see that we're here to help, not hurt. We're not here to punish you. So ultimately, I took those additional resources and I ended at number 10 in the class. Being number 10 in the class, I qualified to apply for the Hollins and Knight Summer Associate Scholarship. And I applied and I got it. And so I spent my first summer at Hollins and Knight in the Orlando office, and I met a bunch of great people there. A bunch of great people who really helped me learn and gauge life in the practice of law. And so at the end of that, and the reason why I had to give you that context is because after my experience at Hollins and Knight, I went to Las Vegas to celebrate being finished with my clerkship. With my summer associateship. And when I went to Las Vegas, I went with my line brothers. Just to make sure I get the definitions out, being a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, I was initiated through in spring of 2016, and there were 14 members on that same line. And so because the line is the number of people who come out with you, I refer to them as line brothers. And so my line brothers, because we stood in line 1 to 14, I was number 6. I went with 4 of my line brothers. Yes, I went with 4 of them. And so when we went to Vegas, I was wearing a suit with Jordans on, and I was denied admission into Drea's nightclub. I think they were having like a pool party or some kind of little party, and I was dressed very fashionable for the event, but I had sneakers on. In particular, those sneakers were Jordans, Air Jordan. And so they denied me admission. And they said, well, maybe if your Jordans were white, we might could let it slide, but we don't allow Jordans. And it's very plainly stated on their promotional websites and those things. And so I immediately I was like, this has to be illegal. Off of something that I'm wearing, I look great. I look good to go here. I don't look like I'm, going to start any drama, start any problems at the establishment. Why am I being treated this way? Right. So from that point forward, I did my law review student note on discriminatory dress codes and seeing this has to be illegal. And again, like all lawyers, it depends. Right. So that is ultimately the Hollins and Knight experience, tailoring my mind and viewing how I see the law, coupled with my experience in Vegas at Drea's nightclub, helped me know that I'd like to do, I'd like to work in that space, in the litigation space of litigating, highly debatable issues, issues that whatever it is, but at the core, I do look for something with social justice, right? Because there has to be equity.
Okay, so you have that incident in Las Vegas. That was 1L year going into 2L year. Where did you end up in your class rank by
I
the time?
graduated at the end.
Yeah.
Yes, so I graduated number 6.
Okay. So you graduated number 6. You had worked at Hall and Knight your first summer. What? So, okay, for those who don't know, after you graduate law school, you have to take the bar exam. So you don't really do anything that summer because you're studying for the bar exam. So after you take the bar exam, what do you do?
So after you take the bar exam,
No, like
you
what did you do specifically?
oh, what did I do?
Yeah.
So I signed on. So I summered. I did another summer position at a regional law firm in Orlando, and they made an offer, and so I started working in June of 2020. So I started through the bar. I was working through, but they gave me July off just to do the last minute studying and do the last leg. So after the bar exam, I started working almost immediately. That next Monday, I started working at the firm, but I also started 2 weeks later my studies for my Master of Laws in Fashion Law. And so, for for the sake of explaining, in the older system, there used to be a Bachelor of Laws, then there was a Master of Laws, and then there is a Doctor of Juridical Science, SJD, Doctor J. There's another terminal degree. So there are 3 levels of legal degrees that you can get. But the Juris Doctor is all you need to practice law. So after that, you can get the Master of Laws, which is now the system we're in. So that acts as a specialty in whatever area you want to learn. And so you go and you do an immersive in that area. So I did an immersive in fashion law for that year, met phenomenal professors who are brilliant, who are intelligent, who are game changers, and they're ushering the new wave of legal practitioners.
How many fashion law LLM programs exist in the United States?
1, and it's at Fordham University.
Okay. And so how many people that identify the same way as you have graduated with the LLM in fashion law from Fordham University?
I am the only Black male to have graduated from Fordham University's fashion law LLM program. I believe we also have a African American woman, but I am the only Black male.
So you're the first.
Yes.
And you became the first in 2022?
2022.
Okay. So oftentimes were you going to say
I was
something?
going to say if I could caveat, I just wanted to say one statement really quick and then let you go. Yes, I became the first Black male to be formally trained in fashion law in 2022, but fashion has been around for centuries.
Yes. And so what I was going to say is oftentimes I talk to people who are like the first to do something, like, for example, Hazel Land was the first Black woman to get a law degree from the University of Florida. But what we always miss is that if you're the first, you are also the only. So do you feel as if you are chartering a path, or do you feel as if you are alone in this kind of specialty that you're in right now?
To be completely honest, I think it's a blend of both. Because currently I'm working as a judicial law clerk. So I'm not quite in the practice of law because I'm not representing clients within that regard at the current moment. But I believe that the feeling of aloneness, the I guess the loneliness in being the first and only at the current rate and phase is that I'm not out practicing yet what I have been formally trained in, and so it's kind of like, oh my, I'm not yet ushering in the next generation of Black male fashionistas, if you would, or fashion LLM students. And I think that is kind of where the loneliness comes. But I still think that I'm ushering it, because anytime I get a LinkedIn from someone who sees that I have a fashion law LLM, they're like, well, what is that? I spoke, what is that? I'm like, I'm always advocating and educating them on it, and encouraging people to try it if they like it. If they have a genuine passion and interest in fashion law. Like, I know that now it's been recognized. Sneaker law has been recognized. So I've met a few guys who have been interested in sneaker law, and I've told them, hey, sneaker law is a subset of fashion law, and that's something to consider. That's something definitely to consider, because the same case would be coupled in. It's going to be pushed into fashion law. And so you would be learning about a lot of them, because especially in the fashion law foundation course, every week you're quizzed unofficially on what's happening in the state of fashion, because you have to be aware. You have to be aware of what's in the state of fashion. So you'll discuss common issues with other things, not just the traditional IP issues. Oh, whose trademarks being infringed, whose copyrights being infringed. It goes deeper than that, right? It goes into all of the different areas of licensing. What licensing agreement is at stake here, right? And then you're looking at certain strategic decisions of, say, for example, I'll give you as an example, the Jordan 1 case with the Air Jordan 1s. Air Jordan 1s are a sneaker, basketball sneaker, that have a certain silhouette that are easily that the average person can identify. There was a lawsuit involving that shoe because the design of the shoe is not protectable under copyright. And so it has, I believe Nike went to its common law trade dress to protect the Air Jordan 1 silhouette. And so that was infringed by another individual. And so a common consideration that you have to think about is, if you're proceeding under common law trade dress, or trademark infringement, or copyright infringement, if you would as well, what happens if your trademark, copyright, or your rights are invalidated? Do you want to risk that? So the strategic decision, and so fashion law is also teaching you about those strategic considerations, because when you advise a fashion brand, you have to advise them properly, because, I mean, hey, you can go all the way to court, spend millions, thousands or millions of dollars, and now you've got that brand to lose their money maker, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those considerations are things that, I try to help, bring to the light, because too often because I'm the first and only, and there are not many of us, too often the degree is diminished to something that is only niche or only boutique qualifying.
So, way a long time ago, towards the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned how, actually towards the middle, you mentioned how you have a Bachelor of Science in Forensic Biology, and you mentioned something called the patent bar. So very quickly, can you give very quick clarification as to how the patent bar works into any of this, like 2 sentences? It doesn't have to be very deep.
Absolutely. So the patent bar is a second exam. So for individuals who graduate from college with a Bachelor of Science in like chemistry and certain hard science degrees, they're eligible to sit for the patent bar. And that patent bar is for anyone who has the hard science undergraduate degree. So if they're a non-lawyer, they will be a patent agent, right? You can be known as a patent agent by passing the patent bar. But as a lawyer who takes the patent bar, then you're eligible to be known as a patent associate, because you can now litigate and defend those patent applications and prosecute patent applications and those things. So the patent bar is a separate test and exam that is taken to prosecute, litigate, and defend patents in their own court and in federal courts as well.
And so I promise you we're coming to the end of this conversation. I want to kind of look forward. So you mentioned earlier about kind of being the first / only and like having people reach out to you on LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is a social media adjacent platform where you can have like professional discussions. You can basically post your resume online and have those kind of discussions. But do you have any advice for, like, think about you when you were trying to figure out how you tie your shoes? What advice would you give younger you, whether it's about becoming an attorney, whether it's about finding your own path? What advice would you give younger you?
My advice, and I say it a lot. My advice is God's minute, because that the experience of me learning how to tie my shoes is synonymous or analogous to God's minute, the poem. And the poem goes, I'm gonna give it the best I can. I'm gonna give the best recitation of it that I can at the current moment without having looked at it in a while. You've only just a minute, only 60 seconds, and it forced upon you. Can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to you to use it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. And so in that statement, right, if you look at me tying my shoes, I had a short window of opportunity to do what I had to do to make sure that I got what I wanted, right? Take time out of the situation. Look at each goal, each thing that you want to do, and apply God's minute, right? You're there for a time, a season, a reason. Make the most out of that reason so that when you finally get to the end, you have learned how to be the better you.
I love that. And so, just to recap, because I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been taking notes. Of the many accomplishments that you have, some of the highlights are you served as the student government president for Fayetteville State University from 2016 to 2018. That's 2 terms that you won, even though you were in a contested race. You are a spring 2016 member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, number 6 in your line. You graduated number 6 in your class at FAMU Law, and you are the first and only Black man in the United States to earn a fashion law LLM from Fordham University. Earlier in the conversation, you said, and I quote, "I had no other destination but success." And so my last question for you is, what is the most important thing about what you're doing now, or what do you look forward to doing in the future to leave your impact on this career field?
I have an answer, but I need you to repeat the question.
Okay. So when you were leaving from high school, going to your summer program at Fayetteville State University, you said, "I had no other destination but success." So what are you doing now, or what are you going to do with your work that's going to leave an impact on the career field?
I have to leave you with one story, because I think for me, in Latin, doctor is translated to docere. I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but it's DOCERE, and that means teacher, right? So I believe a Juris Doctor to me means a teacher of law, right? And so for me, I teach through storytelling. So if I'm teaching through storytelling, I have to leave you with this last story so that you understand the impact that I am trying to leave and will leave on this world and the legal profession and life. When I was an undergraduate as a freshman, there was the SGA president at the time, my freshman year, was named Jared James. He was a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. He never showed that to me. I never knew until years later. Well, until it was my time to join. But he used to go home he was also from Charlotte, North Carolina. Jared would occasionally say, Elliot, I'm going home this weekend. Do you want to ride with me? He would take me there. I tried to offer him gas money. He would never accept it. One day, we were coming back from Charlotte to Fayetteville. We stopped at Little Caesars Pizza, and he said, what pizza do you want? I said, I don't eat pepperoni, I don't eat pork. He says, I eat pork, so I'm going to get pepperoni, but what do you want? You want cheese? I said, yeah, I'll do cheese. So I was thinking he was going to get me a slice. He purchased me a whole box of cheese pizza. That's one of the countless deeds that he did. But finally, when I tried to extend cash to pay or to repay him for what he did, he said to me, and these words have always stuck with me, is, I don't need your money. The way you repay me is to do it for someone else. Right? And so if we take the monetary component out of it, right, let's boil it down to its foundational principle, right? Be kind to others and do unto others to help them get to a place where they can do for others, right? So that is my methodology and my impact that I plan to leave on the legal profession in this world is by, in everything that I do, can I make it easier? And easy not in the sense of giving someone a handout, but in the sense of, can I eliminate a barrier or obstacle in someone else's quest to the legal profession, time in the legal profession, or any place thereafter? Can I do that? And if I can do that for at least one person, then I have now created a cycle in them, hopefully, that will continue this cycle so that this world can be a better place and we can have good and kind people no matter what.
Thank you so much for your time, Elliot. I really appreciate everything that you've told, sharing your story, and allowing us to learn from you.
Thank you for this opportunity.